So we're going to start this morning with some input from Rue Stewart, who's the Programme Officer for Church and Society in the mission team. And Rue's going to share with us some of his thoughts, some of his observations about ways in which URC buildings and URC churches are being a presence in their community. Thank you, Rue.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I recognize a few faces amongst you, which is really good to see, and some other faces I've not come across before. You'll tell from my accent, I'm not from around these parts. I'm Northern Irish by birth, but I live in London now and have been for almost 10 years, actually, so goodness. And it's a lovely sunny day where I am. Hope you're having a nice sunny day wherever you are as well. So I'm the Programme Officer for Church and Society at Church House. My role is to help the church speak out and take action on issues of justice. And you'll understand that injustices often occur together rather than in isolation. There's the interconnection of things like poverty, food availability, caring for creation, peace and security, migration, and the effectiveness of our political systems. It's a really complex web of needs. So our thinking as people who are caring for our communities and want our churches to thrive, it needs to take account of all these diverse injustices around us so that we can have maximum benefit. And I can see, looking around this room today, we have an amazing array of people who are involved in this and doing this in their communities. And I'm always really impressed every time I go out or I hear about what various churches are doing, the projects that they're involved in, the sheer commitment of not just people in this room, but people that you're representing in all of our congregations is absolutely incredible. Something that perhaps we don't celebrate and trumpet as much as we should because we're all very busy getting the work done. And sometimes it takes someone else like me to try and come along, to try and understand what's happening in your church communities and to then share that and to try and inspire others. And a forum like this, like the Buildings Forum, is a brilliant opportunity for us to share exactly all the good news that's happening as well. Our church community sometimes feel a little bit like a flickering light in comparison to the huge needs that are around us, but having a physical, sustained presence in the community through our buildings and through activity are having a real impact on neighborhoods, families, and individuals in need. And it's really important for us to remember that, on a cold February Wednesday morning, whenever you're wondering why are we doing this, actually it is making a difference, and it's a joy for me to be able to try and collate some of that and to try and share some of that information. Firstly, I do want to say on this Zoom today that there are people who will be intimately aware of how our congregations are responding to the needs of their neighborhoods, and we do need to do better in acknowledging and celebrating that. I'm based in an office environment, so often I just hear the whispers of what's going on and try to find out for myself what's happening. And so we really want to be able to share the successes and try and inspire other people to do the very things that you're doing. Largely, I find that our congregations are really brilliant at actions. They're really brilliant at caring and doing what needs to be done for their communities, but they're often reluctant to tell other people about it, which I think is an absolutely beautiful humility. And I completely understand why sometimes people don't feel comfortable sharing about their successes and the things that they're doing. But actually, it would be really helpful to hear about them, to hear about what you're up to, and to be able to share those things, because there's other people who would benefit from hearing about that, who would really be encouraged by that, might be inspired to try something different, and they could emulate your successes and perhaps avoid the pitfalls that you might have encountered and learned from. And that's the joy of being part of a denomination, isn't it? That we don't do any of these things on our own. And we share the wealth of knowledge and experience, even in this room, to have a significant impact on our ministry as churches and to be a vital support for people around us. So all of that is just to say, if you do have things to share, if there are activities and projects that you're doing that perhaps you're not even that convinced are that amazing or that different or that special, you know what? They probably are. You're probably doing things that other people haven't quite got around to yet or have struggled with or are wondering about different options and different solutions. And so if you're able to share those things with me, that would be really wonderful. All it really requires often is perhaps a photograph of the project, thinking carefully about who's in that and that they have permission if there are people in the photograph. And a few sentences, we can let you know what those kind of sentences might have to be. And then our comms team will do the rest to try and get the word out there and to try and share that. And it really makes a big difference. I don't know how you find this, but I find every time there's a bit of news comes up on my email, something comes through where a church has just been involved in a project and it's made a difference in the lives of even one or two people. There's something about that which really inspires me and encourages me and makes me want to do more. So I think it might be the same for the rest of us as well. So let me share a couple of little projects that I've been witness to in the last little while. Some of them I've gone to visit, some of them I've just heard about, and I'd love to share some of those with you now. What I really don't want to do is to share with you things which are just so amazing and so wonderful and so involved and so complicated that you just are in despair thinking, well, I could never do that. My circumstances are completely different. Why are you telling me about this? Because we could never do this. And now I feel completely inadequate. I don't want to do that. But what I do want to do is maybe give you a sense of the scale that there is. There are places where people are able to sustain quite a lot of activity and other places where they've just done a few tweaks in how they're doing things and it's made a big difference for their community. So hopefully you'll find yourself somewhere along that scale where you feel empowered to do something rather than completely disempowered by the amazing stuff that other people seem to be doing. How could you ever do something similar? So last month I was in Wolverhampton in Lee Road, URC, and really I'd had this in the diary for ages. I really wanted to go and see what was going on. It was a busy morning on a Wednesday. It was nice and sunny outside. There was a parents and toddlers group meeting. Not an unfamiliar thing to see in some of our churches. There was an English class going on for people for whom English was a new language. And there was an adult drop-in centre happening over the lunchtime and into the afternoon for adults who were perhaps vulnerable, adults that needed support, adults that just needed to be in a safe place or to give respite to carers who were off doing other things. It was a beautiful morning. And me being based in an office, I just love getting the opportunity to go out and see what the church is really getting up to. I chatted with the church secretary. I found out that there were 5 worship services a week on the Saturday and Sunday. Yes, I've just seen some people spit out their coffee. Go, what? But the joy of it was that those services, most of them were being conducted by other churches that wanted to use the facility that was there. So they have a lovely space. And so there's a URC congregation meets in there, but also other congregations that are a little bit different, maybe don't use English as their first language, they might use other languages, and they then are a real service for the rest of the community that perhaps wouldn't be reached by the URC congregation's style of service. It was brilliant. And also, if you think about that sort of complex web of needs there, it's not just that they were providing a service for people who were perhaps migrants who had come into the area or asylum seekers. They were providing a service there in terms of caring for creation, because they heated their building once for the whole day and they were able to use that heat and use that space really well for the whole day. It was a really efficient way to use the heating for the building, and it was a really great way to open up the building for people to come and see what goes on. So it's just a very simple way of trying to be a presence in the community beyond just inviting people along to a service. It's really sustainable. It's only sustainable really because there are so many different organizations involved with it. There's lots of agencies that come and use the space and are part of the overall community there. That requires an awful lot of administration and an awful lot of talking with people and sharing with people, and that might not be sustainable in every particular congregation. This congregation worked really hard to get funding to be able to employ a manager who would be able to come in and make all these things happen. And that's maybe not something that everyone will be able to do. Daniel Holmes is the project coordinator there. He comes from a social work background. He's just wonderful with these people, and it was just a real joy to see what was happening there. But the church really has to work hard to continue to have that funding in order to sustain the work in the future. So, you start something and you want to see it through and you want to help it to develop, and it still requires an awful lot of work. So we have to acknowledge that it's not a simple thing. It's something that does require an awful lot of effort, and it's great that they have the support of volunteers within their church there who are able to go and try and fill in forms and find out what forms need to be filled in, and just try and put these requests in for funding. But it does take quite a bit of effort to make that happen. It can make the rest of us feel a bit intimidated and quite unproductive. How do we even start something like this? Perhaps you're in a rural setting or your circumstances are completely different, and this just wouldn't be an appropriate way for you to go about using your building. But taking the time to understand the needs of your neighbourhood through community surveys and engagement to see what might be helpful is that vital first step in the right direction. On a completely different scale, we have the work of Halstead URC in Essex. They've been hosting Toasty Tuesdays, funnily enough, on a Tuesday, and serving cake, but also toasties and fresh soup. And funding for this was offered as part of the government intervention and the district council funding that came about through the cost of living energy crisis in the cold winter months. And some of you might have heard about this. We have had at least 23 URCs plus more LEPs who've been registered with the national organisation Warm Welcome. And churches have either created a new drop-in space in their weekly calendar for people to come in and get warm and maybe perhaps have warm food, or they've added a hot food offering to an existing meeting that they were already having, often extending the times and advertising the opportunity in their neighbourhoods, and made a really quick and easy difference in some ways. It was easy to something they were already doing, and just augmenting it, getting some funding that was available at the time from their local council, and making it a bigger difference and a bigger impact for people who were in need. Most of the feedback that I've received from churches that were involved in this scheme was something like this. They would say, we worked hard to make it happen. We got volunteers, we got funding, we got food. Sometimes they might have bought a sort of a hob to heat things on because they didn't have one in their building. Some people, managed to get a TV license so they could offer TV watching for people. So they said all these things, but they said most of them would agree it wasn't as busy as they were expecting, which to me actually sounds a bit like a good thing in a way, because people were able to heat their homes maybe better than we had anticipated. Perhaps our outlook had been a bit more pessimistic than what was the reality. But actually what did happen was, because they were perhaps not as busy as they had thought, they were able to have really quality time, safe time, with often vulnerable adults that wouldn't have happened before. So it wasn't always about numbers, and we do emphasize that a lot, don't we? And I think it's right. It wasn't always about having lots and lots of people there, but actually just that quality time and a safe space for people to come and feel heard, feel seen, feel supported, and feel loved. And that sometimes can't happen in a really, really busy environment. So for those places that weren't as busy as they were expecting, it was still a good thing. At the winter peak of our energy crisis, there were over 7,000 spaces, 7,000 spaces in England, Wales and Scotland that had been identified as offering these warm hubs. Many of them were churches and other organisations like libraries as well. Mosques and other places of worship too were involved in this. And they have now extended this. So warm hubs are not just for winter now. Maybe they're not going to be particularly focusing on the warm aspect, but there are churches that have just enjoyed having this aspect of their community outreach, which was just understood by people. People just got it. Oh yeah, we come together, we stay warm. And now they want to come together and just be part of a community. So it's wonderful how that funding from the government, which has now dried up, has been able to launch something, to trigger something else, which has happened, which is sustainable within some of our buildings. It's really good to see that the churches are being seen as a vital hub of support in the community, not just a place which isn't an optional extra or a place down the road that we go to for weddings and funerals and things, but actually a vital hub of support, sometimes through just simple tweaks to their existing programs. So I've been blethering there about 2 places that I think were really good. There are loads more, but I know that you also have loads more that you would be able to share as well. So I'm really happy to hear questions if you have them, but I'm also really keen that you would get in touch. Hopefully, if you hear one thing from me today, it's that I really want to hear about the things that are working for you, things that have been successful, news of projects that are getting off the ground, that you've been involved in, that you're working with, things that you've learned, things that have helped, like funding, if you have managed to find funding streams that we could point other people to as well. You know, this isn't a competition. This is about just trying to share what is good. And also, if you would like to attend a webinar specifically about applying for grants or community engagement from other URC folk who have been successful in this, then I'd quite like to organise something like that, because people do ask about this quite a bit. So if that's something that you think would be helpful, would you let me know? I'll put my email address in the chat so you can see it and copy and paste it in somewhere else if you would like to get in touch to either share information, or if you would like more information on how we can get our buildings even more useful for our neighbourhoods as well. We'll try and organise something online if that's useful. Okay, that was a very, very lightning fast glimpse into what's happening in some of our churches. Hopefully there's been some encouragement there for you and some ideas perhaps that might come to fruition. And if you want to know more or chat more or find out more, please do get in touch. Okay, Lindsay, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roo. That's really helpful. And also, you know, I'd reinforce that idea of us sharing, because we learn from one another, we can be inspired by one another, and that's certainly the message I got from you, Roo. Also interesting to see how, you know, the idea of the warm hubs has actually transformed into something quite different, or a continuation, but really developed in so many of our local churches. And they might call them different things, but just that space for people to gather and feel safe. I've just popped the mission email address into the chat, and we would really like you to share your stories and your news of what your churches are doing. And as Roo said, you know, both the good and the challenges, because that's how we learn from one another and can share from one another. We promise to share those with Roo, and we're going to sort of collate them as well. And if possible, we'll collate them so that we can share with those of you who are here in this meeting, so that we can have an opportunity to do that. You will also have an opportunity to ask questions and to comment on what our speakers are saying this morning, but we're going to hear next from Aftab. Aftab is a member of Mission Committee, and he's also, this morning, he's come to speak to us about the Harmony Project in Blackburn. Aftab, I've got your slides, so you just let me know when you're ready and when you want me to move on. Thank you.
I'm ready. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for having me. I'm Aftab Mughal. I'm from Blackburn. I'm a member of URC Westbury Gardens. And I'm also coordinator of Racial Justice and Intercultural Ministries of Northwest Synod. Originally, I'm from Pakistan. For the last 17 years, I live in the UK with my family. I served the refugee community, migrants, asylum seekers for almost 15 years in different capacities with different organizations. But for the last 7 years, I worked with Blackburn YMCA as a project officer. Then there was changes in the management. YMCA closed its services in Blackburn, so the project was closed. But on the demand of the community members, we started a new organization which called Community Harmony Project. We are very young. Our services started just on 1st of January this year. And we work with migrants, asylum seeker, refugees community in Blackburn, Darwin Borough Council from all ages, nationalities, faiths, and cultural backgrounds that flee their homeland to build their lives in a safe environment in the UK. We work with almost 19 different nationalities: Albania, Algeria, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gambia, India, Iran, Iraq, Ivory Coast, Kazakhstan, Lebanon, Myanmar, Namibia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Ukraine. The main objective of the project is to empower the migrant, asylum seekers, and refugee communities so they should integrate into the local society and live an independent life with confidence. The organization doesn't have any paid staff. It runs by the volunteers, people from different backgrounds and nationalities and religion. We started a community cafe every Wednesday from 11 to 1. And each week, 2-3 women bring food. If they're coming from work or they can't cook food, they bring biscuits and drinks because they feel this is their place. They feel safe and they have taken the ownership of the cafe. As you might know, many those who come to the UK can't speak English. That is essential to communicate with the local communities and live an independent life. Therefore, we run weekly English support sessions. It helps them to learn English language skills and take part in the local community activities and celebrations. The organization supports the migrant communities to learn to create CV and cover letters, to learn job search and filing in the job applications, and how to register with the recruitment agencies. They also get preparation for job interviews. The organization helps the communities to their physical, emotional, and social well-being. On 18th of March, we organized an international food party that was attended by 130 men, women, and children. 12 women cooked their cultural food. 20 young and old volunteers ran the event. It was sort of a celebration of cultural diversity. Next month, we are taking about 100 people to the Lake District for community picnic. For children, we often run arts and crafts sessions. Recently, we have started another cafe, which is Social Enterprise Cafe, where the community will learn business skills. Each Tuesday, we provide food from one country. This Social Enterprise Cafe is to promote cultural harmony among communities. Yesterday, we provided food from Somalia, and next week, a Sudani lady is bringing food. We also provide one-to-one service. People are in different needs: housing, education, jobs, etc., etc. And wherever we can help them, we try to help them out. For these events, for the cafe and small activities, because we run almost every month some sort of activities, for instance, Women's Day, Eid party, and we hire Quakers Meeting House. But for the big events, we hire the Exchange, which is run by Ignite Church. The reason is because these two buildings are in the center of the town. We want to hire our URC buildings, but these churches are far away from the town center. And usually it's easy for families and people who don't have much, they don't drive, they don't have much money for travel. It's easy for them to come to the center of the town. So that's the reason we hire Quakers Meeting House and the Ignite Church place. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do ask.
Thank you so much, Aftab. That was really, really interesting. And I think what's interesting as well is that we can't, for all sorts of reasons, it's not always appropriate to use our own buildings. And that working with partners, working with other churches, working with other faith groups, there might be a more appropriate building to use, just as Aftab's explained. And I think it's sometimes we need to let go, don't we, of our own sort of, what's the word, our own kind of identity, maybe, not as Christians, but as buildings, as churches buildings. So Aftab, that was really great. After I've had some pictures, and I just want to run through them quickly. I don't know whether, I mean, hopefully you'll just be able to see what they relate to from what he's just spoken, but I don't want you to miss out on them. So I'm just going to share them quickly with you so that you can see some of the breadth of what Aftab's been talking about. I think there's a celebration party for the King's Congregation there in the top right, a craft club in the bottom right. Aftab, do interrupt if I'm getting this wrong. I can see you there in the left-hand picture, a planning group of some sort. You can see the cafe here, and some of the amazing food that's on offer. I think the other thing that was really interesting from Aftab is it sounds very much like the churches are working with the community rather than at or to the community, which I think is a really important thing about what we do. Aftab, I've forgotten which event this is.
This is the International Food Party.
Oh, thank you. International Food Party. Excellent. And this is a celebration for Edinburgh Barrack.
Yes, Eid Party.
An Eid Party. And there's you at the cafe. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aftab. And Sarderson now, who's in Southminster URC, and also has the pastorate including Burnham on Crouch and Malden. So she's in deepest, darkest Essex. Thank you so much, Anne, for joining us this morning.
That's okay. Thanks, Lindsay. Could I share my screen, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you. Hello, it's nice to be here. Yeah, as Lindsay says, I'm in deepest, darkest Essex, so I just thought I'd let you know where I was to start with. I'm going to be talking about Southminster, Christchurch, Southminster, and various things around there. And that's Southminster there. It's on the East Essex salt marsh coast. So if you go any further east from us, you fall in the mud. We're actually just 9 miles north of Southend, but it's actually a 24-mile drive and takes 45 minutes to get there. Such is the nature of the area that we live in, surrounded by rivers. It's an interesting village. It's quite an isolated village in some respects. It's a growing village, as is happening in a lot of places around Essex at the moment. We have a lot of new building going on and not necessarily the infrastructure going alongside it. So that's a challenge for our communities. We have 2 churches in Southminster. We have the 12th century parish church of St Leonard's, which, as you can see, is very old. And then we have Christchurch URC, which is, as I say, it's a classic 1950s URC building. So some of you might recognise the style of building. It was rebuilt in the 1950s after damage during the war. It's home to the local food pantry and the local Citizens Advice Bureau. It has been for quite a few years. It has, wait for it, 4 members, 2 of whom are active, and they are the elders. I came here just under, just over, no, about 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years in August it'll be, so just under 3 years ago, and was greeted by these 2, I have to say, very committed and very enthusiastic elders who basically said, we're in Last Chance Saloon now, and that's where we set off. But what is going on is partnerships, and this is the interesting thing. First of all, there's a very exciting partnership going on with St Leonard's, the Church of England, the 12th century building. That was well and truly in place before I came, with some shared worship and a good sense of support from the local vicar, which was much appreciated by the URC. And I have to say, we are literally 5 minutes at most away from each other. We are very, very close to each other. There really is no distance between us at all geographically. And that's very much, I call that very much a chosen partnership, and a sense of connection between the 2 churches to serve in the village and the local area. And we're ably supported there by the vicar and the curate, who are absolutely great. And since we went back to worship after the pandemic, after being in lockdown, we've been worshipping at St Leonard's every Sunday, and I take part in worship from time to time there, but that's very much our worshipping life, while we actually say, what are we going to do with the URC? Another partnership that we have is what I call our URC partnerships, because they're URC, and I think these are kind of imposed but very much appreciated, and that's the partnership of the pastorate. That's Southminster there, and we're in partnership with Malden URC and with Burnham on Crouch URC. Malden's about a 25-minute drive, Burnham on Crouch is about a 7-minute drive away, and we share ministry across the 3. And in our synod, we're being invited now to come together as mission partnerships, to see what it means to support each other more. We get a great deal from that partnership, this small church in Southminster. Apart from anything else, they're able to have a minister, me, who's able to give them some of her time, which is appreciated, I know, but also we have other people that support, friendship support, prayer support, but also very practical support, particularly from some very able members at Malden, and you know who you are, Clifford. So that's a very important partnership, and as we go forward, that will be important about how we support each other in our work. We also have some community partnerships going on, which are really exciting. We have, as I've said, the older partnership that's been going on since before my time, with the food pantry and with the Citizens Advice, but also in recent times we've sought out other communities, other parts of the community to be in partnership with. This started when we got a community meeting going on the beginning of September last year, and with the curate, who works very closely with us now, we invited lots of different community groups to get involved with us, and to come along to a community hub, which Lindsay also came to as well, and helped us to share together about how what the needs of the community were, what kind of things it might be good to see happening. And there's all sorts of things that have started to develop from that. We've been having some community meetings to talk more about how we might develop, and we've been getting to know people, we've been drawing people in, we've been making some really useful connections in the community, which interestingly connect with the other 2 churches in the pastorate as well, which is really great. And I've put here in my notes, we're also getting things. It's looking likely that we're going to be given, or at least at a very low rate, have a very nice kitchen from one of our community partners who doesn't need it anymore. I'm going to go meet with them in a couple of weeks to find out what the deal is going to be. I think it's going to be very favourable. We're going to get a load of comfy chairs free of charge through a friend of a friend of a friend in the community, and they're going to be delivered hopefully in the next week or 2. And we're also getting known. I found out. So our name comes up in council discussions and things like that about a place where things might be able to happen. And of course, we also have a partnership with Synod as well, to help us work out how we can be supported. So this is a picture here from our community day that we held at the end of April. The poster I saw was part of the opening slide that we had, and this was in a community open day when we basically opened our doors for the first time to say, not least to the community, look, we are actually open. We might not look very open, but we are actually open, and there are things going on here. You might not be able to see all the things that are written around the edge there, but these are some of the key groups that we've got partnerships with. We've got the CVS, the Community Voluntary Service. They're absolutely brilliant. They're really helping us a lot. We've got an organisation called United in Kind, who are a local Essex organisation who help people to do good things in community, and they enable people. They're great. The Rainbows, the Guides and the Brownies, who meet on our premises, are very keen to be part of it. We have a bereavement group that are now just starting to meet on our premises. Citizens Advice Bureau. At the top, you might not be able to see, we've got the local men's shed, which is going to be opening at our station building, our local station building, but they're probably going to use our premises for some of their stuff as well. Hidden there is the food pantry, because obviously they're an important partner. We've got Essex Child and Family Wellbeing, who are an Essex-wide group who are really, really useful. We've got in touch and we're working with our National Health Service social prescriber locally. I've also been doing this in Malden as well, and I have to say that's a really, really useful partnership to create. They really do know what's going on, and they really do have their finger in loads of pies. We have a partnership with an organisation called Knightswood, which have supported housing, and it's from them that we might get our kitchen. They have a supported housing place in Southminster, and we'll be maybe doing some work in the community, and obviously also the Southminster churches. So that was a great day, and from that day grew a small, but I'm hoping it will grow, list of what we're calling Friends of Southminster Hub, people who would like to be involved, who want to know more, who will tell their friends about what might be going on here, and also volunteers to do some work for us, to do working parties. So what are we hoping to do? Well, what are our intentions? Well, we want to build on being a home to the Dengie Food Pantry. Dengie is the name of the peninsula that we're on. The Dengie Food Pantry and the Citizens Advice Bureau, to use the space even more for the benefit of the local community and possibly the wider Dengie community as well, because there's a lack of support in the community. And so the two churches in Southminster, working with community partners and the wider community, are finding out what can be done to make this hope turn into a reality. It's really important they're finding out. We're having lots and lots of conversations at the moment, so that we're finding out who we need to be working with, what's already happening, all of that stuff. And then our intention is whatever we do, it will be rooted in the Christian faith. It'll also be open to all that will benefit this community. So it's going to be faith-bound, it's faith grounded, but it is also very, very inclusive. And our intention is to have worship during the week, not on a Sunday, that will be at St Leonard's, but worship during the week. And also we're developing a prayer space for anyone who uses the building at the moment. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be our building, which is, to be blunt, quite a tatty mess. The picture I had at the beginning of the building was actually taken quite a few years ago by Google Street View, and it looks a little bit less tatty there. But close up, it's very tatty, both inside and outside, and so there is much that needs to be done. Because the question that was in front of us is, do we do one big building project, or do we go ongoing to see what we can do? Well, I think we're probably going to do the ongoing bit by bit, drawing on the help and the support that we will get within our URC partnerships, but also drawing on the connections that we're getting in the local community. So we've got these seats coming, so we can start to put up our seating area so that we can create somewhere comfortable for people to sit and chat when they come to use the food pantry. When we get the kitchen, and when we've worked out how we're going to fit it in and how that'll all work, which is a next conversation that's got to be had, we'll be able to have a nice kitchen where we can serve people rather than the rather inadequate kitchens that you can see pictures of there. We've also just got the funding for a container, a big storage container, so that the food pantry have somewhere better to store their stuff, so that we can use the inside of the building for community work. And we're also going to create a better storage space for them. We also need to think about getting a community worker, because you'll already have realised that I'm stretched across 3 churches, and I'm also have a synod role as well. So there's only so much stuff that I can do, and our curate won't be with us forever. So we need to start thinking, how are we going to have the personnel to do this? And the key things that we've been learning is that these things take time. Building up the kind of relationships that we're building up don't happen overnight, and we have to take the time that we have to take. So we are going with starting where we are and stepping out gently, and starting where we are. That's really important. So taking advantage of our relationship with the food pantry and the connections in the community that we already have. And also taking time to invest in our relationships and our partnerships. So as a church, making sure that we have these community days, and making sure that we come along and talk to people, and we meet up with people, and we keep the communication going. But also being honest. So we've said to ourselves that if nothing is really going to be working, if we can't see that this is going to be working out by Easter 2024, then actually we have to ask very serious questions about the future, because we can't just keep pushing and pushing at something that we think we want to do, just so that we're saying, look what we're doing, when actually we need to go in a different direction. And that's about being open to the community. It's about being open to God. It's about being open to each other and being honest about what is possible. So we've set ourselves a time limit, and I think that's really important, so that we can step back early next year and say, okay, is this going anywhere, or do we actually need to look at something else? So that's a kind of little glimpse of what's happening at Southminster, and it'll be interesting if you've got any questions later to hear what they are. Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing all of that. There's a huge amount of information in there. And I think the word that everybody probably would have kept hearing over and over is partnerships. And also the fact that we heard the patience that takes and the work that takes. They're not instant. I did want to just share something really quickly. As Anne said, I was at that meeting last September where the curate and Anne had invited people who were interested from community groups. And I don't know about Anne, and I'm not a necessarily over emotional person, but my eyes filled when I saw the room filling up, because there were something like 40 people from different groups came to that initial meeting that had a real passion and interest in how Southminster, Christchurch Southminster could be used to be part of the community. So it's a very moving piece of work that they're doing there, and really inspiring. Just before we finish, we've got the date of our next meeting is on the 26th of September. That will be an evening meeting, and it's specifically about net zero and how our church buildings can be adapted, altered, changed to help us to reach our net zero target. So that's on the 26th of September, an evening meeting. And then the last thing I want to do is introduce Victoria James, who has been able to join us. Victoria, if you unmute and say hello, hopefully you'll appear for everybody.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I wasn't able to join you sooner, but I had, as often happens, a meeting clash. But it's been great to hear the latter part of your meeting and hear what's going on.
And it's great for us to have you with us, Victoria, and welcome to the Buildings Forum. And yeah, you're gradually being welcomed to all the various URC groups. Victoria has very graciously accepted an invitation to close this meeting, this forum, in prayer this morning. I just want to thank you all again for joining us, and for sharing so much of what you're up to, and particularly thank you to Rue and Aftab, and your contributions have been so inspiring and thought-provoking and challenging for us. So thank you very much for giving up your time this morning. Victoria.
May we pray. Lord, we give you thanks for the opportunity to meet together and to share ideas and experience. We give you thanks for the energy and the many gifts and graces represented on this screen, but also across the URC. As we, your church, prepare to celebrate Pentecost, we pray that your Spirit moves us and urges us on in praying for each other and for our community, urging us on in building and sustaining partnerships to serve our communities, urges us on in our desire to be utterly mission focused. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's bang on 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, Victoria, for that lovely prayer. And we'll see you next time.